It was after nightfall when, wet and tired, the travellers came at last to the Brandywine, and they found the way barred. At either end of the bridge there was a great spiked gate, and on the further side of the river they could see that some new houses had been built, 2-storied, with narrow straight-sided windows, bare and dimly lit, all very gloomy and un-Shire-like. "Stop gaping at me through the bars and open the gate," said Mary. "I'm sorry, Master Mary, but we have orders." "Whose orders?" "The chief's up at Bag End." "Chief? Chief? Do you mean Mr. Lotho?" said Frodo. "I suppose so, Mr. Baggins, but we have to just say the chief nowadays." A horn sounded. Out of the bigger house on the right, a large, heavy figure appeared against a light in the doorway. "What's all this?" he snarled as he came forward. "Gate break-in? You clear out or I'll break your filthy little necks." Then he stopped, for he had caught the gleam of swords. "Give me the key," said Mary, but the ruffian flung it at his head and then darted out into the darkness. As he passed the ponies, one of them let fly with his heels and just caught him as he ran. He went off with a yelp into the night and was never heard of again. "Neat work, Bill," said Sam, meaning the pony. There was no gainsaying 4 such masterful travellers, all armed, and 2 of them uncommonly large and strong-looking. They had not made any definite plans, but had vaguely thought of going down to Crick Hollow together first and resting there a bit. But now, seeing what things were like, they decided to go straight to Hobbiton. So the next day they set out along the road and jogged along steadily. As evening fell, they were drawing near to Frogmorton, a village right on the road, about 22 miles from the bridge. There they meant to stay the night. The Floating Log at Frogmorton was a good inn, but as they came to the east end of the village they met a barrier with a large board saying "No Road," and behind it stood a large band of sheriffs with staves in their hands and feathers in their caps, looking both important and rather scared. It was rather a comic cavalcade that left the village, though the few folk that came out to stare at the get-up of the travellers did not seem quite sure whether laughing was allowed. A dozen sheriffs had been told off as escort to the prisoners. They came to Bywater by its wide pool, and there they had their first really painful shock. This was Frodo and Sam's own country, and they found out now that they cared about it more than any other place in the world. Many of the houses that they had known were missing. Some seemed to have been burnt down. Said Mary, "We are not used to footpads in this country, but we know how to deal with them." "Footpads, eh?" said the man. "So that's your tone, is it? Change it, or we'll change it for you. You little folk are getting too uppish. Don't you trust too much in the boss's kind heart. Sharky's come now, and he'll do what Sharky says." They rode back to the middle of the village. There Sam turned aside and galloped off down the lane that led south to Cotton's. He had not gone far when he heard a sudden clear horn call go up, ringing into the sky. Far over hill and field it echoed, and so compelling was that call that Sam himself almost turned and dashed back. His pony reared and neighed. "On, lad, on," he cried. "We'll be going back soon." Then he heard Merry change the note, and up went the horn cry of Buckland, shaking the air. "Awake! Awake! Fear! Fire! Foes! Awake! Fire! Foes! Awake!" Behind him, Sam heard a hubbub of voices and a great din and slamming of doors. In front of him, lights sprang out in the gloaming. Dogs barked, feet came running. Before he got to the lane's end, there was Farmer Cotton with 3 of his lads, young Tom, Jolly and Nick, hurrying towards him. They had axes in their hands. When Sam got back, he found the whole village roused. Already, apart from many younger lads, more than 100 sturdy hobbits were assembled with axes and heavy hammers and long knives and stout staves, and a few had hunting bows. More were still coming in from outlying farms. The man aimed a savage blow at Merry, who stood in his way. He fell dead with 4 arrows in him. That was enough for the others. They gave in. Their weapons were taken from them, and they were roped together. Ted Sandyman spat over the wall. "Garn," he said. "You can't touch me. I'm a friend of the boss's. But he'll touch you all right if I have any more out of your mouth." "You're dirty and insolent, Sandyman," said Merry, "and also very much out of your reckoning. We are just going up the hill to remove your precious boss. We have dealt with his men." Ted gaped, for at that moment he first caught sight of the escort that at a sign from Merry now marched over the bridge. Dashing back into the mill, he ran out with a horn and blew it loudly. "Save your breath," laughed Merry. "I have a better." Then lifting up his silver horn, he winded it, and its clear call rang over the hill. And out of the holes and sheds and shabby houses of Hobbiton, the hobbits answered, and came pouring out, and with cheers and loud cries they followed the company up the road to Bag End. At the top of the lane the party halted, and Frodo and his friends went on, and they came at last to the once beloved place. There, standing at the door, was Saruman himself, looking well fed and well pleased. His eyes gleamed with malice and amusement. A sudden light broke on Frodo. "Sharky!" he cried. Saruman laughed. "So you have heard the name, have you? All my people used to call me that in Isengard, I believe. A sign of affection, possibly." Wormtongue halted and looked back at him, half prepared to stay. Saruman turned. "Wormtongue done no evil," he cackled. "Oh no, even when he sneaks out at night it's only to look at the stars. But did I hear someone ask where poor Lotho is hiding? You know, don't you, Worm? Will you tell them?" Wormtongue cowered down and whimpered, "No, no." "Then I will," said Saruman. "Worm killed your chief. Poor little fellow, your nice little boss, didn't you, Worm? Stabbed him in his sleep, I believe. Buried him, I hope, though Worm has been very hungry lately. No, Worm is not really nice. You had better leave him to me." A look of wild hatred came into Wormtongue's red eyes. "You told me to! You made me do it!" he hissed. Saruman laughed. "Yeah, you do what Sharky says always, don't you, Worm? Well, now he says follow. He kicked Wormtongue in the face as he grovelled and turned and made off. But at that something snapped. Suddenly Wormtongue rose up, drawing a hidden knife, and then with a snarl like a dog he sprang on Saruman's back, jerked his head back, cut his throat, and with a yell ran off down the lane. Before Frodo could recover or speak a word, 3 hobbit bows twanged, and Wormtongue fell dead. "That's the end of that," said Sam. "A nasty end, and I wish I needn't have seen it, but it's a good riddance." "And the very last end of the war, I hope," said Merry. "I hope so," said Frodo and sighed. "The very last stroke. But to think that it should fall here, at the very door of Bag End. Among all my hopes and fears, at least I never expected that." The trees were the worst loss and damage, for at Sharky's bidding they had been cut down recklessly far and wide over the Shire, and Sam grieved over this more than anything else. For one thing, this hurt would take long to heal, and only his great-grandchildren, he thought, would see the Shire as it ought to be. Then suddenly one day, for he had been too busy for weeks to give a thought to his adventures, he remembered the gift of Galadriel. He brought the box out and showed it to the other travellers, for so they were now called by everyone, and asked their advice. "I wondered when you would think of it," said Frodo. "Open it." Inside it was filled with a grey dust, soft and fine, in the middle of which was a seed, like a small nut with a silver shale. So Sam planted saplings in all the places where specially beautiful or beloved trees had been destroyed, and he put a grain of the precious dust in the soil at the root of each. He went up and down the Shire in this labour, but if he paid special attention to Hobbiton and Bywater, no one blamed him. And at the end he found that he still had a little of the dust left. So he went to the 3-farthing stone, which is as near the centre of the Shire as no matter, and cast it in the air with his blessing. The little silver nut he planted in the party field where the tree had once been, and he wondered what would become of it. Spring surpassed his wildest hopes. His trees began to sprout and grow as if time was in a hurry, and wished to make 1 year do for 20. In the party field a beautiful young sapling leapt up. It had silver bark and long leaves, and burst into golden flowers in April. It was indeed a malorn, and it was the wonder of the neighbourhood. And so it was settled. Sam Gamgee married Rose Cotton in the spring of 1420, which was also famous for its weddings, and they came and lived at Bag End. And if Sam thought himself lucky, Frodo knew that he was more lucky himself, for there was not a hobbit in the Shire that was looked after with such care. Then Bilbo woke up and opened his eyes. "Hello, Frodo," he said. "Well, I have passed the old Took today, so that's settled, and now I think I'm quite ready to go on another journey. Are you coming?" "Yes, I'm coming," said Frodo. "The ring-bearers should go together." "Where are you going, master?" cried Sam, though at last he understood what was happening. "To the Havens, Sam," said Frodo. "And I can't come?" "No, Sam, not yet anyway. Not further than the Havens, though you too were a ring-bearer, if only for a little while. Your time may come. Don't be too sad, Sam. You cannot be always torn in two. You will have to be one and whole for many years. You have so much to enjoy and to be and to do." "But," said Sam, and tears started in his eyes, "I thought you were going to enjoy the Shire too for years and years after all you've done." "So I thought too once. But I've been too deeply hurt, Sam. I tried to save the Shire, and it has been saved, but not for me. It must often be so, Sam, when things are in danger. Someone has to give them up, lose them so that others may keep them. Then Frodo kissed Merry and Pippin, and last of all Sam, and went aboard. And the sails were drawn up, and the wind blew, and slowly the ship slipped away down the long grey Firth. And then it seemed to him that, as in his dream in the house of Bombadil, the grey rain curtain turned all to silver glass and was rolled back, and he beheld white shores, and beyond them a far green country under a swift sunrise. At last they rode over the downs and took the east road, and then Merry and Pippin rode on to Buckland, and already they were singing again as they went. But Sam turned to Bywater, and so came up the hill, as day was ending once more. And he went on, and there was yellow light and fire within, and the evening meal was ready, and he was expected. And Rose drew him in, and set him in his chair, and put little Eleanor upon his lap. He drew a deep breath. "Well, I'm back," he said.